What is up, responsible day traders? Today is Sunday, April 17th, 2022. Happy Easter for those who celebrate and happy Sunday for those who don't. I'm Lindsay Duff, and this is Responsible Day Trading. Like I said, it's Easter. We had a holiday on Friday, so the market was closed that day. So what we are going to do now is just see what's happened. I did take a little peek at it before I got started with this, and wow, it's kind of dropped a little crazy. So we're going to look a little bit into that and see what we can anticipate. And, if we expect it to drop a lot more or just a little more. And if it does, what we're going to think about at that time. So we're going to go through those things. Let's go ahead and take a look at the news that we've got coming up. So let's head on over to responsibledaytrading.com, and then we're going to go to news. We're going to go to market news. And here we can see we got a little bit of news this week. No, nothing on Monday, so nothing today. You'll see Tuesday some pre-market. Wednesday we have after the market opens, 9 and 9:30. So those may be something to be aware of if you pay attention to news, or maybe see it just kind of pop in one direction really quick, to be aware that around 9 and 9:30 on Wednesday that we have some news coming out. Thursday we have some pre-market, and then we have Powell is speaking at 10 and at noon. So that may actually give us an interesting Thursday. We have nothing on Friday, so who knows? Maybe that could give us a little bit of pop in the day, a little funness to work with. We'll have to wait and see. All right, let's go ahead and check out that market. Here's what we've seen so far. Last week, we were talking about what would happen if we get down to this Bollinger Band. And you can see not only did we get to it, we broke through it with some strength, some momentum, and we have come down to the zero line. Now, the zero line is typically a stopping point for us, but you can see what's happened the last time we were at the zero line. We had a lot of strength breaking through it. Back here, we had some strength and it slowed down, but we also had a little bit of a different scenario happening in the EMAs. The EMAs were wide and spread apart, and they were showing us continuous strength to the upside. Now the EMAs are flat, they're weak, and we're on the opposite side of them. And we're going to get a little bit more into that in just a moment. So, being below them with them weak and crossing over doesn't necessarily say that we have high hopes for this pushing to the upside right now. But we'll see what kind of signals we can look for if we do anticipate this to go up. As of right now, we're below the EMAs. We're working our way below the zero line. We haven't gotten there yet. So it's going to be hard to anticipate up at this time. What would have to happen is for this bar to make almost like a long bar and a close towards the top to show us a flag reversal bar, and then possibly some more bars here starting to close to the upside. But that's not quite what we're seeing right now. We actually saw a nice little pullback into the area of the EMAs and a roll down to the downside. So if we get back down around this 4,200 area or a little bit lower right in here, if we break through that area, then we're really going to start anticipating more pushes to the downside. As of right now, when we had this divergence that pushed it back up, now this is a lower pivot officially than what we saw here, but we have gotten a little bit back above this area, not by much, just a little bit. So what we can see here is we had some momentum to the downside, pulled back up, and it looks like it's still trying to pick up this momentum to the downside. After coming off of these divergences and getting so far above the zero line, what I would typically anticipate is like what I was talking about, is it for it to come down, maybe come down a little bit more, maybe even right back into this area and make a sort of head and shoulders to push back up. Now, if it breaks through this area here, and I'm using a pretty broad area between 4,100, 4,200. If it breaks through this area, I'm thinking we're going to see a lot more down at that point. If we get back below here, pull back into it, and then start pushing down, yeah, I think that we'll be seeing some movement to the downside. But as of right now, we have a shoulder here, a bit of a head here. Will we see another shoulder here? Will we see a little intermittent head and shoulders that was happening right in here? Or if it pulls back down to this area, will we see a little bit intermittent head and shoulders? This is really the strong area that we will need to break through and pull back into and start pushing to the downside if we're going to see it happen. Now, we are lucky. We work in a field and in a world that if it is pushing down, that we can still make money from the movement to the downside. And typically when it goes to the downside, I think we all know it goes down pretty quickly and with some strength. Do I expect it to make it all the way back down, like where we saw it way back down here? No, I really don't. I actually don't really expect it to push through this area. But we're just going to have to wait and see, right? So it is poised for pushing to the downside from this bigger tick chart. So I don't want to make assumptions that it's going to push right back up or get my mindset in that space. So let's look at the next chart, the 28,657. And wow, look at the way this bar just dropped off overnight. So 43.89 all the way down to 43.62. So that's a pretty big bar, a pretty big drop that's happened. Now we can see the BBs down here are looking like they're actually trying to pick up strength to the downside. There's still 20,000 ticks left in this out of a 28,000 tick chart. So that BB can easily pull back in, slow down, and start to look something more along the lines of this. But as of right now, that's not the look it's given us. It's looking like it's trying to pick up strength and continue to the downside. But we did have a lot of momentum push it down from this one big bar. So it may take a couple of thousand ticks for it to slow down and start to kind of regroup itself and move back to the upside if it's going to. I mean, I know you can hear me. My thought process has definitely been for a while in this moving back up, but I don't want to get ahead of myself and try and force anything. That's what can get me into some trouble. Honestly, this still looks like strength to the downside. We've reached a pretty extreme area on the 1597, but don't let me get ahead of myself. Let me go over here and go ahead and look at the 10946 first. So if I'm coming over here to the 10946, the BBs still have distance between them. It's pushing to the downside. I want to pull this open just a little bit more and see where some extreme areas in the MACDs are. Right here. So we have one here, and it looks like we're not quite at that area. So we could definitely see this push down a little bit more. And obviously I'm going to have to put some more support and resistance in here that I had erased previously to kind of get some ideas of where we can anticipate these bounces to happen. So we want to just say, okay, where do we see some major support and resistance areas happening in here? And I'll go on the 4181 a little later on and add a few more. We can look in here, an area that just held up several times. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to stop the market at this area, but it is definitely one that we touch, we hang out at, we pull back into and around, and you can see a lot of closes around that area. So, yeah, so I'm just gonna look at that as another little space that could create a bounce a little later down the line if we move back down to those areas, right? So let's head back over here. And yeah, so right now, BBs are getting wider, right? So typically when they start to get lighter, it means that we see a chance for a slowdown and a turnaround. But we also want the BBs to slow when they're white. We don't want strength in the BBs and expect it to turn around right then. We need to see something jumping in front of that train and slowing it down, right? Because right now it's got just a lot of momentum in this movement to the downside. So let's look at my trading chart, because remember the 1597 is my trading chart. The 10946 is my overall, what I'm looking for in the bigger picture. Do I come back and look at it on the 28657 just to get a even more clear, bigger idea? Absolutely. But this is the one that I have my main focus on, these three right here. And the 233 is typically my entry chart. So if I see something setting up on the 1597, I'm going to look for the 233 to have another signal happen there, but something that gives me much, much lower risk in order to take the trade. Now, if I'm looking at my immediate charts, we had definitely the push back up to the upside with the white BBs here, the way that the MACDs were rolling inside, and it happened here. But now we're struggling to push back through even the EMA on the 233. The BBs are very, very weak to the downside, but they're very, very weak to the upside on my actual trading chart. So I really will expect this to push down further. It may even come back a little bit more and pull into the EMAs here to kind of come back and test this area, or we may even see it pull as far back as the area that held here and the EMAs. But obviously by that time, while this is pushing up, the EMAs are going to come down a little bit more unless it happens one big bar. But pulling up to the top of the Bollinger Band with weak MACDs, strength in the EMAs down here. I'm still expecting this to push down a little bit more. With such a big drop, I do expect obviously a pullback. We've only had a few bars happen overnight, and that was a big drop that happened right there. But part of that may have been because people saw this take off real quick and wanted to hop on that train, because that does happen. So it's very, very weakly coming down here. So like I said, I may anticipate it to pull back a little bit further, but I am looking at the way that the behavior is, and it does look like anticipations of more down until we can get something to really slow this down and give it a strong push back to the upside, get us back above the 10946 EMAs until we start seeing some nice trending movement to the upside. All right, so that's going to wrap that up. I am probably going to come back in the morning. I will come back in the morning, do a quick little wrap up. My kid doesn't have school tomorrow, so I might sleep in just a little bit more than usual, but I promise to have this out before the market opens so we can just get an idea of what we're thinking about, what we're looking for, and how to anticipate the movement that is happening and where we can look for it to go. All right, good morning, everybody. So we're back to Monday. So right now it's Monday, April 18th, 2022. Let's check out what this market has for us. Now, we can see here that it is trying to make that reversal bar like we talked about last night. We're going to need to see this close come up a little bit higher to really create a reversal bar. Now, one of the things that is big about what's happening here is we have flat EMAs. When we have flat EMAs, we can go above and below very, very easily. Right now, the MACD is sitting at that zero line, but we may see something like this happen where it slows down, these BBs kind of pull together, and maybe see it push back up. Technically, on our daily chart, the direction is to the upside. We've come off divergences, got back above the EMAs and the zero line, which moves the direction to the upside. But it's really working on moving that direction back down. So if we can get these BBs to really start breaching the zero line and get these Bollinger Bands to line up with that and start pushing through kind of like right in here. Oh, I just deleted all of my lines. That's okay. Kind of like right in here. Then you'll be able to see it push through to the zero line and possibly change our direction to the downside. Now, one of the things that is a little bit of a struggle for me to think that it's down, even though we've made a lower pivot here, is the fact that we're still above this area that is just held. Okay. When we've come off divergences and pushed back above here, like I said, with the flat EMAs, we can anticipate kind of that wishy-washy above and below. But what we would notice is if we do expect this to come up, we're not too far off from the area that we would expect it to happen. Could it possibly come all the way back down here? Sure. But if we do expect this to come up and maybe make a bit of a head and shoulders, we may see it push back up in this area. Now, we're going to have to see a slowdown in those MACDs for that to happen. And right now, we are not seeing that. So if I move over to the 28,657 here, we can see that, that BB has made a shift. Remember, we had distance between all the BBs when we were looking at it last night, and now we're starting to see a bit of a slowdown like we're seeing right in here. Now, something to mention here. We are well below the zero line and well below the EMAs, which technically means our direction is down. We're having a really hard time getting the MACDs back below this area, so we do have divergences happening between this major low pivot and all of these pivots, which tells us that we are limited on our moves to the downside. Does that mean that it's going to continue to the downside? It definitely could. There was another situation I wanted to discuss where this kind of thing happens. So if we look back here, let's just look back here. And I know this is kind of squished up because I want you to see how this happened. We had a lower pivot that happened, right? But it continued and pushed down through here. And you can see the MACDs are having a hard time making new lows. And even though the price came down, equaled that area, it eventually pushed the price back to the upside and moved everything back up above the EMAs and the zero line. So we may see something like that happen back in here where this area holds, pushes it back up above. Now, because it gets back up above doesn't mean it's going to stay there, but what we're seeing is limited movements, or being able to, at the very least, understand that when these pivots start to happen and the MACDs begin to slow down, it's a good area to anticipate a pretty nice pullback. Now, if we move over to our trading charts, if I'm looking at my 10946, and these are the three that I'm going to look at and say, okay, what's my direction? What am I looking for? Technically, our direction is down. We are below the zero line and below the EMAs. We have a lot of distance to run back to them, so we've got plenty of space to have a pullback. Now, could that pullback get us back above areas here? Sure. So we are above the zero line, which is trying to work us towards more up, but we're not above the EMAs. So technically, on our 1597, the direction is still down. Now, we may see it pull back above, kind of like what we saw right in here, but we can see that little area right there is that area right here. So it was basically just a pullback into the EMAs to push it down. So whenever our direction is down, such as we see here, our anticipations are for our bigger moves to be to the downside, and our pullbacks are smaller moves. And even though this looks like a bigger move, in the long run, it's a smaller move to the upside. So even though we got a decent move up here, we're looking for, since the direction is down, is for these bigger moves to push us in continuation with to the downside. Now, if these BBs get back above the Bollinger Bands and push this back to the upside, then we'll start saying, okay, we've got a lot of room to travel back to the EMAs. Are we going to see this push all the way back there? And at that time, we have to start determining what's happening and if we're going to look for the continuation to happen to the upside. But as I said, right now, the direction is to the downside. We'd have to really see these BBs act weak and start to roll up to anticipate this area to hold, which it may. But we're going to watch it, see how it goes. I mean, this is all we've seen happen overnight. I may stop even doing the Monday morning and just do Sunday night because it's pretty much the same information when we come back in. So we can see that this is pulling down still towards the EMA. We are still well above the zero line, and we're still poised for pushes to the upside. So this may pull back into the area, create a little bit of divergence and push down. Otherwise, we want to see it push back above the EMAs, pull back into them, and push up. It's always about the pullback, okay? We're always looking for the pullback because the pullback is what gives us the opportunity to have low risk. All right, my friends, that is going to wrap that up. So always staying in mind, what is the bigger picture telling us? The bigger picture is giving us the overall, so we know what to look for a little bit more in the bigger, longer run if we're paying attention to what that bigger picture says. If we're always looking at the quicker, immediate picture, we're only seeing what's happening right now, and we're not able to hold on for that bigger move. And that's really what we want to do. We want to hold on for that bigger move. We want to watch where it's going. We want to be a part of it. And we want to be on the profitable side, right? So, all right, guys, I hope that everybody has a wonderful week. I hope that you had an amazing weekend. And as always, you know that I look forward to catching you on the profitable side.